April 2006. Pramod Mahajan is 56 years old. He's the organizational brain of the Bharatiya Janata Party, the man who brought the BJP into the digital age, the man who brokered the BJP Shiv Sena alliance that conquered Maharashtra, the man who organized Advani's Ram Rath Yatra, the man who, as India's telecom minister, helped put a mobile phone in every Indian's pocket. Corporate India quotes him, Delhi's power corridors bend around him. He's being spoken about in hotel lobbies and living rooms across the capital as a future Prime Minister. But for the last 6 months, astrologers have been calling him, one after another, all of them with the same warning. Your life is in danger, sir, from someone close to you, an insider. Pramod Mahajan ignores every single call. And then on April 22nd, a Saturday morning in Mumbai, Pramod sits in his Worli apartment with the morning newspaper. The doorbell rings, and it is his younger brother Pravin. He is let inside and tea is offered, but all within 15 minutes, the most powerful political operative in India is on his living room floor, 3 bullets in his body, asking one question to his brother-in-law Gopinath Munde on the phone. What crime had I committed that Pravin shot me? This is the story of a family that devoured itself from the inside. This is the story of Pramod Mahajan. Hi everyone, welcome to the Desi Crime Podcast, a show where we dive deep into some of the craziest stories from around South Asia. I'm your host Aryaan.
And I'm Aishwarya.
The case that we have for you today is one that seems to have been lost in the annals of political history of India, but yet remains one of the most complicated cases in our jurisprudence.
So, Aryaan, you've created some hype about this episode in my mind. You've told me what we're covering today. You've sent me clips of the person at the center of this story. But I'm a little bit bewildered as a political science student. I didn't know about this case. So I went and looked it up online and realized it's a 2006 case. A generation of us young people, a lot of our listeners maybe who've missed the boat on this political development. So tell me a little bit more.
Aishwarya, I would say to some degree there is a corollary that I can draw between him, between Pramod Mahajan and Shashi Tharoor, even though they are from the diametrical opposite ends of the political spectrum in India. So I guess with that analogy, I'm also forewarning our listeners. There are a couple of warnings before this episode. One warning is that I would like our listeners to treat this episode with the historical gravitas it deserves, rather than trying to have preconceived biases, which may or may not be justified, against the political parties and the religious organizations that I'll be talking about, because treat the man Pramod Mahajan not as a political operative, but rather as a historical figure, because then it becomes easier to be intrigued and enjoy the story. So that's just a forewarning. Of course, you can choose to do as you wish. And the second is that, like the Shashi Tharoor episode, I made my biases clear from the get-go, which is that, hey, I like this guy for who he is. I thought that was me being transparent, but clearly that made people conflate my diagnosis of the case with my biases. In fact, when I was trying to do the opposite, because as you know, I started off the Shashi Tharoor thing thinking he did it. It was my research that made me believe that he didn't do. But anyway, you guys feel free to call me out whenever you feel like. In this case, but it's the same thing, which is that I'm keeping my biases for the orator Pramod Mahajan aside from the political figure Pramod Mahajan, and I've been very deliberate about how I've covered the case. So yeah, that's just the forewarning. He's an insanely fascinating figure who brought so much technology of the media technology into India that you might have heard about. And yeah, I can't wait to get into it.
So with that forewarning in place, I think there's nothing else left to do. Take us to the story.
I mean, before that, they can hit the subscribe button. Yeah, but after hitting the subscribe button, on with the story for the day. It is 8:30 a.m. on a Saturday morning in Mumbai, April 22nd, 2006. A man walks into the Worli police station. He is calm, His hands are steady. He does not ask for a lawyer. He does not make a phone call. He walks up to the officers on duty and says 6 words that leave them shocked. Quote, "I am Pravin and I killed Pramod." End quote. Meanwhile, 6 kilometers away at Hinduja Hospital in Mahim, his elder brother is being wheeled into the emergency surgery ward. 3 bullets from a .32 caliber Browning pistol are lodged inside his body. One in his lower right chest, one in the abdomen, and one has torn through the liver. You see, the liver is the most vascular organ in the abdominal cavity. A quarter of the body's total blood supply passes through it at any given moment. A bullet through the liver does not just create a wound. It creates a hemorrhage. The surgeons are not just removing bullets, they are trying to stop a man from bleeding to death from the inside out. The surgery will last 4 hours. The hospitalization will last 11 whole days. Because this is not an attempted political assassination. This is not an attempted contract killing. This is not a terror attack or a gang war. This is a younger brother who walked into his elder brother's apartment, rang the doorbell, was welcomed inside, was offered a cup of tea, sat in the living room, and then drew a pistol and pulled the trigger 4 times. And then, as he was leaving, he turned to his brother's wife Rekha, the woman who had just heard the shots from the bedroom, and he looked at her and said the words that tell you everything you need to know about the kind of act that this was. Quote, "You did not listen to what I said, so now bear the consequences." End quote. This is not a man who snapped. This is not a man overcome by sudden rage. This is a man who warned, who asked, who was ignored, and who decided to deliver consequences. The question that will drive every minute of what follows in this story is, what was it that nobody listened to? And to answer that, we need to go back. Before the politics, before the power, before the monthly allowance and the text messages and the woman at the center of it all, we need to go back to a small town in Maharashtra. 2 brothers, 11 years apart, and a father who died too young, leaving the older one to become something he was never supposed to be. Chapter 1. 2 boys from Mehboob-Nagar. Pramod Venkatesh Mahajan is born on October 30th, 1949 in Mehboob-Nagar, a small town in what is now Telangana. His father, Venkatesh Devidas Mahajan, is a school teacher. His mother is Prabhavati. The family are Deshastha Brahmins, a community with deep roots in Maharashtra's cultural and spiritual life. They're not wealthy, but they're respectable and modest, the kind of Indian household where the father's salary stretches just far enough and education is treated as the only reliable exit from a life that offers few. The family migrates then from Mehboob-Nagar to Ambajugai, a small town in Maharashtra's Bir district, moving into a rented house in Mangelwar Pet. This is where Pramod grows up. He's the second of 5 children, 2 brothers, Prakash and Praveen, and 2 sisters, Pratibha and Pradanya. The parents had a knack for alliteration when it came to naming their progeny. See what I did there? Now, Pramod attends Yogeshwari Vidyalaya for school, and then moves on to Swami Ramanand Tirth College in the same town that he grew up in for his undergraduate studies. At Swami Ramanand Tirth, he meets a young man named Gopinath Munde. They become close friends. Decades later, Munde will marry Pramod's sister Pradanya. Decades after that, Munde will be the man who bundles Pramod's riddled body in a car and races to Hinduja Hospital. But right now, these are just 2 college boys that have grown up and studying in the same college. You see, Pramod is academically sharp. He gets a bachelor's degree in physics, then a bachelor's in journalism from the Ranade Institute in Pune, then a postgraduate degree in political science. Further, he passes the Maharashtra Certified Typewriting exam from the Maharajan Typewriting Institute in his town. He is also, from a very young age, a joiner of organizations. He is a member of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, the RSS, since childhood. He attends shakhas. He absorbs the ideology, the discipline, the organizational culture that will later make him the most effective political operative his party has ever produced. And on top of that, he has a love for theatre, for natak. It is through the local drama scene in his town that Pramod met a young woman named Rekha. They fall in love, he courted her, and on March 11th, 1972, they marry. He's just 22 years old. But unfortunately, Pramod's father never had a chance to see his oldest son get married, because when Pramod was just 21, a year before he got married, his father, Venkatesh Devidas Mahajan, the school teacher, died, leaving his oldest son to take care of the family. You see, in an Indian family, when the father dies, the eldest son does not just grieve and move on. He inherits a role. He becomes the patriarch, the provider, the decision maker. And when there is an 11-year gap between the eldest and the eldest does not just become a brother with additional responsibilities. He becomes almost a surrogate father, the one who pays the bills, the one who makes the decisions, who sets the example, who is held up by the mother as the standard against which the younger siblings are measured. Pramod Mahajan steps into this role at 21, newly married, his wife barely settled into the household, and a 10-year-old brother looking up at him with the eyes of a boy who has just lost his dad. This is the origin of everything that follows. Not the politics, not the money, not the resentment. This moment, and I want you to be very aware of it, when a 21-year-old who becomes a father to his 10-year-old brother because the real father is gone. That dynamic, provider and dependent, patriarch and ward, never changes. For 35 years, through everything that happens next, this fundamental architecture of this relationship remains exactly what it was in 1971. Pramod gives, Pravin receives. Pramod decides, Pravin follows. Pramod rises, Pravin watches.
Aryaan, this dynamic that these two brothers are inheriting, it has the capability of turning their relationship, their brotherly bond, into something so beautiful because it's seen conflict, it's seen struggle, it's seen the loss of a family member so different than a regular sibling duo would. And so it has the chance to turn into something that's so strong against the face of the outside world, but it also has the chance to turn into this paternalistic, I guess, infantilizing dynamic between the two, where the younger seems to be at the mercy of the older and the older seems to have a chip about that relationship. Yeah. And it seems like this one is going in the latter. But the point I'm trying to make is it could have just as easily gone the other direction, where they could have had perhaps the most beautiful relationship with each other.
Aishwarya, 100%. And I think, I can call back to my own experience a little bit here, where my younger brother and I share a similar relationship. And instead of how Pramod's shapes up, I would say ours is quite the opposite. Whenever somebody asks me, hey, what's your relationship with your brother like? I tell them, I love that piece of shit to death. And that has been a function of nurturing that relationship. I think when you find yourself in these relationships where the external pressure, the external view can make or break it, because of what people say, what people talk about, it is the two people in that relationship that need to have a communication about how external resentment doesn't matter. Until you don't have that communication, that gap will only keep widening. It needs to literally be addressed point blank. So me and my younger bro had these conversations very actively ever since our teenage years that, people will compare us and this and that. It doesn't matter. Fuck them, this or that. But that was a very important, proactive, in fact, way of tackling this, which here just did not happen.
And in our culture so obsessed with romantic relationships, I think we know that all of this applies to those romantic relationships for sure. We know that it's important to communicate. We know that it's important to stand as a unit in the face of conflict against the world. Even in the absence of conflict against the world, you are a unit. We know all of this about romantic relationships, but we forget that our biological relationships, our familial relationships, a sibling relationship equally needs those. I think that's just kind of lost on all of us.
I think there is an assumption in those familial relationships where people, I think, refer to trite heuristics such as blood is supreme, blood is blood always stays together. Almost just by virtue of sharing genetics, it requires no work on nurturing it just because you share some DNA. And I think that has found itself in our culture to some degree, where people assume they'll be fine. They're brothers, they'll be fine. But I know for a fact that some of the worst relationships I have seen around me are blood to blood relationships, and that is because of a lack of communication. So taking blood for granted is not the right way of going about it, because not to be funny, but that can lead to blood being shed, like in this case. To keep the family afloat, Pramod takes a job as an English teacher at the Kholeshwar College in his town. From 1971 to 1974, he teaches. And that's not glamorous. A man with Pramod Mahajan's intellect and ambition teaching English in a small town college is incongruent with who he is. But at least it keeps the family fed. And in the RSS shakhas that he still attends in the evenings, he's learning something that no college can teach: how to organize people, how to build a cadre, how to turn ideology into action. In 1970 and 1971, while still a student, Pramod works as a sub-editor at the Tarun Bharat, the RSS Marathi newspaper. This is where the political instinct in him sharpens. He learns how media shapes narrative. He learns the power of communication, of framing, of controlling the narrative. These are skills that will later make him, in the words of his own opponents, quote, India's first modern spin doctor. And then, in 1974, Pramod makes the decision that changes everything. He quits teaching and he becomes a full-time pracharak for the RSS. A pracharak is a full-time organizer, a man who gives up personal career ambitions to work for the movement. It is a radical choice because you're walking away from a salary, a pension, a predictable future. You're choosing ideology over stability. But Pramod Mahajan was never built for stability. He was built for something else entirely, as he is about to find out. Chapter 2: The Architect. June 25th, 1975. Indira Gandhi has declared a state of emergency in India. For 21 months, democracy is suspended in our nation. Political opponents are rounded up and thrown into prison. The press is gagged. Civil liberties vanish overnight. The RSS, as an organization the government views as a direct threat, is banned. Its members are hunted. And Pramod Mahajan, just 25 years old, is arrested and incarcerated in Nasik Central Prison. He will spend nearly 2 years behind bars, from 1975 to 1977. Inside Nasik jail, while other prisoners count the days, Pramod reads for a master's degree in political science. He turns a cell into a classroom. This is the man in a nutshell. Even in imprisonment, an opportunity to accumulate is what he sees. And in Indian politics, an emergency-era imprisonment is a credential that money just cannot buy. It marks you as someone who stood up when standing up could cost you everything. When the emergency ends in 1977 and democracy is restored, Pramod emerges from prison with something way more valuable than any degree: a reputation. By 1978, he is General Secretary of the Maharashtra BJP at just 29 years old. The Bharatiya Janata Party is formally established on April 6, 1980, and Pramod is among a select batch of RSS workers absorbed into the new party structure. From here, the ascent is almost vertical for the man. He becomes the BJP's chief organizer in Maharashtra, working alongside his college friend and now brother-in-law Gopinath Munde. Together, they brokered the alliance between the BJP and the Shiv Sena that will dominate Maharashtra politics for decades. That alliance wins the state assembly elections in 1995. Munde becomes deputy chief minister. That was a big role. But the moment that puts Pramod Mahajan on the national map is the year 1990. BJP President L.K. Advani launches the now infamous Ram Rath Yatra, a massive cross-country political campaign that will reshape Indian politics in good and bad ways for years to come. Pramod is given the job of managing the logistics, and here is where his genius reveals itself. In 1990, when most Indian political campaigns run on loudspeakers and pamphlets, Pramod Mahajan installs fax machines in local BJP offices along the route of Advani's Rath. He uses them to send hourly press releases to the Central Party office. Hourly! In 1990. This is not the era of Facebook and tweets. This is 1990, where in real time, most Indian politicians will not figure out this technology for another decade to come. The Rath Yatra is a massive success from the POV of its supporters. And the man who made the machines literally work, the man behind the logistics, the routes, the press coverage, the communication network, is Pramod Mahajan. From here, the milestones stack up fast. He's elected to the Rajya Sabha, and in 1996, when the BJP briefly comes to power for 13 days under the Vajpayee government, Pramod is appointed the Defence Minister of India. When the BJP returns to power more durably in 1998, he serves as the advisor to the Prime Minister at first, and then is appointed Minister for Information and Broadcasting, then Parliamentary Affairs, and then Information Technology. And then, in 2001, he gets the ministry that will define his legacy: Communications and Information Technology. Under Pramod Mahajan, new telephone connections explode across India. The cost of phone calls drops dramatically. He oversees the policies that enable the cellular revolution, the moment India goes from a country where a phone is a luxury to a country where a phone is in every pocket. He uses SMS campaigns during elections, introduces electronic polling methods, trains party spokespersons for the new 24-hour television news cycle. Aishwarya, my introduction to Pramod Mahajan was from one of his lectures to the BJP Karyakartas about how to be a public speaker. It is an amazing 4-part YouTube series that you can access. Not the best video or audio quality, but it is a man who in the early 2000s is talking almost prophetically about how media is going to change in a way so drastic that politicians will need to and celebrities will need to prepare for. And a small example is that he said that now you need to be careful of how you sit during the Lok Sabha debate, even if you're not talking, because what if the camera, this new technology, the camera catches you digging your nose, for example. Nobody is going to give a shit about what the politician was talking about. The news will circulate the image of him picking his nose. That was the kind of foresight he had. And now, I mean, if you, in the creator world and the celebrity world, everybody is about, you need to have your PR people and this and that. He was the OG PR guy.
Aryaan, that's actually all I knew about Pramod Mahajan before diving into this case, before you told me we're going to cover it, is that I'd heard of him as one of the young technology leaders of India who were at the cusp of TV revolution, satellite revolution. They were the first generation of leaders who were about to be shown on screens across the country. They were the first ones to be scrutinized in this way by a mass population. And so they were at the forefront of so much of what we discuss now in a social media age. So yeah, he really was the pioneering force behind so much of that. And people like him were back then.
I will get my editors to put a clip of one of his lectures here with some poignant observation. But honestly, as I was listening to this in a YouTube rabbit hole one night, I was just thinking everything this man is saying 25 years ago almost is applicable to literally every single one of us, at least in our field of work today. And so I always like, folks that have foresight of that quality. But yeah, so that's just about him as the technological leader of that time.
एक और ध्यान रखें, हम जिसके सामने बोल रहे हैं उन लोगों की थोड़ी हमको जानकारी होनी चाहिए ताकि हम उदाहरण वैसे ही दें जो उनके अनुभव में हो। नहीं तो गांव में भाषण कर रहे हैं और उसमें उदाहरण बता रहे हैं। जब हवाई जहाज 40,000 फीट पर चला जाता है तब जिस प्रकार की आवाज आती, हम गांव वाला बोलेगा ये हवाई हमने कभी बैठे नहीं, कभी 40,000 फीट पे गए नहीं, ये कौन सी आवाज की बात कर रहे हैं। या आप किसी CII के मीटिंग में बोल रहे हो, सब शहर के बड़े बड़े उद्योगपति आए, आप कहे देखिए बैलगाड़ी जब चलती है ना तब जब बाईं ओर का चक्कर, अरे भाई वो बाप मैं कभी उसमें बैलगाड़ी में बैठा नहीं, उसको बाईं ओर के चक्कर का उदाहरण क्या दे रहा हूं।
In the same vein, India Today writes of him, quote, "Controversies do not contain him, personal flaws cannot slow him down, political failures cannot deter him, and media-friendly modesty is definitely not his trademark. He has made politics interesting and made the BJP a lot more compatible with the digital age. Pramod rhymes with panache." End quote. He is equally comfortable in a corporate boardroom and at a dusty political rally in rural Maharashtra. He understands money, media, and technology in a way that no other Indian politician of his generation did. Now, this is not me glazing him. I'm trying to make a point. I'm trying to make you understand what the polity at the time felt towards him. Because at this time in New Delhi, people had genuine conversations about how Pramod Mahajan may become the next Prime Minister of India. In fact, around the fateful time of his hospitalization, he was in a power struggle with Nitin Gadkari himself for the leadership of the BJP, positioning himself for the top as the party's aging leadership prepared to step back.
Aryaan, I'm going to cut you off right there and take this episode on a little bit of a different tangent. For those of you who don't know, I'm a very visual thinker. So while Aryaan is describing the early years of Pramod Mahajan, I wanted to go on Google and see what he looked like in his heyday. And what I have found out is that Pramod Mahajan is the father of Rahul Mahajan, the same Rahul Mahajan we've seen on Big Boss, and who was part of the second season of Rakhi Sawant's Swayamvar, which wasn't even called Rahul Ka Swayamvar. It was called something obnoxious like Rahul Dulhania Le Jayenge or something. He's his father. That's insane.
Aishwarya, that is also an angle in this story that we're going to get to. There are so many weird spider webs that this man eventually found himself interconnected to. And yes, Rahul Mahajan is
That's
one
crazy.
of them.
Such different men. And I don't mean to put one down by like lifting the other up, but they're very, very different men. The father and son, they just, wow, crazy.
Asha, I think you can put the cabinet minister above a Big Boss contestant. I don't think you would be frowned upon for doing so. But a Big Boss contestant is not the only skeleton in Pramod Mahajan's closet. He's not without his shadows, you see. He's seen as close to various lobbyists and corporate houses. There are persistent allegations of financial irregularities during his tenure at the telecom ministry, particularly regarding his alleged favouring of the Reliance Group. His son Rahul's business partner, Ashish Deora, is found to own companies that received 1 crore Reliance Infocom shares at the rate of 1 rupee per share. In a city that runs on favours and quid pro quos, Pramod Mahajan knows how to play the game, and he is playing it. But corruption is an allegation levied against Indian politicians with quiet familiarity. It is what happens next that is the chink in his armour which will forever haunt him. A chink so glaring, it is a case we will cover on the Desi Crime podcast as an episode unto itself. It is the case of Shivani Bhatnagar. Shivani Bhatnagar was a journalist at the Indian Express who was murdered on January 23, 1999 in Delhi. An IPS officer named Ravi Kant Sharma was arrested in suspicion of her murder. Now, Aishwarya and I were talking about this case and talking about covering it just a few weeks ago, and only now are we realizing that this case also finds itself connected to the Pramod Mahajan case, but in a way that is very difficult to comprehend. The police say that Ravi Kant Sharma, the IPS officer's motive was that he had fathered Shivani Bhatnagar's child and was under pressure from her to marry him. But Sharma's actual wife, Madhu, went public with a completely different story. She claims that it was Pramod Mahajan, not her husband, who had the affair with Bhatnagar. She claims that Pramod Mahajan was the real father of the Indian Express journalist's child. No formal charges are ever filed against Pramod. No evidence is produced. But the allegation hangs in the air. Another data point in a growing picture of a man whose public brilliance coexists with a very private appetite for risk. Because the Shivani Bhatnagar allegation was not an isolated rumor. Pravin, in later statements, goes on to talk about Pramod's, quote, numerous romances, including alleged affairs with foreign diplomats. Now, this reminds me of someone that we have covered on the podcast before. It reminds me, Aishwarya, of Shashi Tharoor, a man with political power, but also incredible charisma and ability, control over his language that was able to sway people over. So I see, maybe I'm fetching for a corollary, but I just see that resemblance where there are talks in Delhi's corridor about him being a Casanova of sorts, Shashi Tharoor. And I see and hear those whispers about Pramod Mahajan also. As a woman, what do you make of this? Like, what does it feel like to you? Is there an appeal to this kind of a man that is natural?
I can totally see it, Aryaan, because there are certain lines of work which put people in the path to so much fame, so much power, and then so much public recognition that rumors of this kind, even actual occurrences of this kind, are so much more common. So a man that has so much bravado on screen and then is in contact with lots of people from all over the country, sometimes all over the world, I can totally see it being true, and I can totally see the corollary between him and someone like a Shashi Tharoor as well.
Yeah. In fact, and I'll get into this later, but Pravin, now whatever Pravin says needs to be taken with several grains of salt, obviously, because Pravin has shot his brother. But Pravin, in later statements to journalists and police, talked about his older brother's multiple romances. In one of them, he gives the example of Pramod almost having a second marriage and crying about the mistake of cheating on his first wife. Now, this account is, and I'll get into this account later, but again, it's given by Pravin. So believe it or don't, it's up to you. My point is that where there is smoke, there is fire. And there is a quip to that Shashi Tharoor himself came up with in an Oxford debate, which was, when there is smoke, there's fire. I guess you've never seen a cigarette butt before. But I think in this case, the age-old adage is applicable, because if so many people are talking about you having multiple romances, there must be something flirtatious about your disposition. There are multiple women, multiple relationships, a pattern of behavior that the family knows about but does not discuss, because the family's public image depends on the man whose private life is anything but controlled. This is Pramod Mahajan in April 2006 when we meet him. Brilliant, powerful, wealthy, politically ascendant, and carrying enough personal secrets to fill a book. And a book was filled, but by none other than Pravin himself, who after shooting his brother went on to write a book that we'll talk about. Chapter 3, The Cage. Now let us talk about Pravin, because the record on Pravin Mahajan is thin, and that thinness tells you everything. Pramod's life is documented in exhaustive detail, every election, every ministry, every alliance, every controversy. But Pravin's life exists in fragments. He is the Wikipedia footnote to his brother's Wikipedia page. What we know is this. Pravin goes into the construction business in Mumbai, an industry that, in that city, requires two things above all else: political connections and capital. Pravin has access to the first through his brother. The capital is the problem. His construction business does not thrive. He strikes some land deals that go bad, and debt accumulates. And gradually, a grown man with a wife and twin children, a son named Kapil, and a doctor named Vaishali becomes financially dependent on his elder brother. Pramod provides 75,000 rupees a month to Pravin's family. Rent, food, school fees, the basics of a middle-class life in Mumbai, all flowing from the elder brother's pocket. 75,000 rupees a month in the India of the early 2000s is a comfortable middle-class income. But here is what makes it corrosive. It is not a salary. It is not a return on a SIP or an investment. It is not a payment for services rendered. It is an allowance. It is an elder brother giving his younger brother pocket money, except the younger brother is a man in his 40s with a wife and children. Every month, that transfer arrives, and every month it says the same thing without uttering a word. You cannot take care of your family. I can take care of you. You need me, but I don't need you. Sarangi Mahajan, Pravin's wife, would later describe this deterioration in painfully specific terms. Quote, "We began to understand that he and his family didn't think we were at par with them," she told the Metronome magazine in 2012. Pravin began to feel that his brother was embarrassed by him, she said. He resented the fact that Pramod's PA would set an appointment for the two brothers to meet, that Pramod didn't return his calls. "Soon, my husband stopped attending functions within the family, though he never stopped me and the kids from going." End quote. Listen to that again. Pramod's personal assistant would set an appointment for the two brothers to meet, a PA, as if Pravin were a constituent, a lobbyist, a businessman seeking an audience, not a brother. The younger brother had to book a slot in the elder brother's Calendly to have a conversation. And when he called, sometimes the call went unreturned. During the trial, a phrase emerged that captured this dynamic with brutal precision. Pravin himself felt Pramod had raised him, quote, like a pet dog. Fed, housed, cared for, but never as an equal. A pet dog eats when the master feeds it. A pet dog lives where the master allows it.
Aryaan, now in the middle of all of this, obviously there are bits and pieces of this where I feel for Pravin. I can understand how such a dynamic can get created. But that 75,000 rupees per month being given and being accepted is telling to me, because it tells me you are monetarily benefiting from this relationship like a leech when you want to. And because of that, you're also incapable of walking away. And so the entire dynamic of, it's not like your brother is going out on TV interviews and putting you down. It's not like in front of the family you're being cussed out and you're being made to feel small. That's not it. You're being given money. That money is making you feel small. but also you're incapable of providing for yourself or living in the means that you have for yourself.
Yeah.
And so you're voluntarily accepting that money while continuing to churn in your own thought process about what that makes you feel like. And that's just a little bit absurd to me.
I fully agree, because there's a very different inferiority complex born as a function of being relegated, and inferiority complex as a function of feeling that you're relegated are two very different things, right? And in this case, it's the latter. It's more an innate, inborn discrepancy where you're seeing your brother's ascendancy, right? Your brother's not pushing you down. Your brother is ascending. And so that distance is making you intrinsically feel smaller. And that begs the question then, hey, why not do that for yourself? But maybe you're not lucky enough or smart enough. I mean, one can psychoanalyze success and IQ to the nth degree. As true as your point of him walking away from 75K is, like he should if he feels all of that, it is the heroin drip, because now he has a family that he needs to pay for one way or the other.
Of course.
But there is one more element, Aishwarya, that complicates this. And it is Pravin's wife itself, Sarangi. Because Sarangi had a weird relationship with Pramod that we will get into.
Oh, that complicates it for sure.
The other dimension in this family's fracture is one that almost nobody discusses publicly, and that the police were reportedly instructed not to pursue, and it involves Sarangi Mahajan. You see, Pramod chose Sarangi. Personally, he spotted her at a college function where he was the chief guest and decided she would make a suitable wife for his younger brother, Pravin. In this family, the patriarch did not just provide the money or the connections and the career opportunities, he also selected the bride. Think about the dynamics that sets up. The woman in Pravin's bed is a woman his brother handpicked. And over the years, a pattern develops that people around the family notice and whisper about. When Sarangi needs something, financial help, advice, any kind of intervention, she does not go to her husband Pravin. She goes to Pramod, her brother-in-law. Pramod visits Pravin's house with a regularity that his own wife Rekha reportedly, quote, knew little of. And people begin to talk about the oddness of this arrangement. Open magazine, in a deeply reported piece published after Pravin's case, stated it directly. Quote, sources say that she was at the heart of the brothers' bitter feud. There is also talk of Pravin pulling the trigger because he believed that there was a relationship between his wife Sarangi and Pramod. All this is speculation, but the fact that the police were ordered not to investigate further points to skeletons in the Mahajan closets. End quote. Now, we do not know if this allegation of a relationship between Pramod and Sarangi is true. We may never know. But here is what we do know. We do know that when Pravin Mahajan took the witness stand on October 30th, 2007, the prosecution called his testimony scandalous and demanded it be recorded behind closed doors. And the judge agreed. That testimony is sealed until 2027 under the RTI restrictions. Whatever Pravin said that day, it was explosive enough that the state did not want it on public record. And we know this, that when Pramod was fighting for his life at the Hinduja hospital after the shooting, Sarangi, his sister-in-law, wanted to visit him. But it was Pravin's own mother, Prabhavati, the woman who raised both brothers, who blocked her from going. And then there is the gun. You see, Pravin owned a .32 caliber Browning pistol. It was licensed, but the license had a wayward history. In 1996, Pravin applied for a pistol license, but the Thane police rejected the application through the formal routes. It was eventually granted by the then Home Minister of Maharashtra, none other than Gopinath Munde, Pramod's brother-in-law. At Pramod's request, the victim's own brother-in-law, at the victim's own behest, enabled the weapon that would be used to shoot the victim. Now we are approaching April 22nd, 2006, and in the months leading up to it, the relationship between the brothers had cracks surfacing to the surface. One evidence of such a crack surfacing between the brothers was an SMS sent on April 15th, 2006, exactly 7 days before the shooting. The message in Hindi reads, quote, अब ना होगी प्रार्थना, अब ना होगी याचना, अब होगा रान, जीत होगी या अंत होगा. There shall be no more prayers, there shall be no more begging. Now there will be war, and it will end in victory or in annihilation. This message seems to declare a war against his own brother, and it was followed up by him saying that he wants his 75,000 rupees stipend to be increased to 10 lakh rupees or a million rupees for our Western viewers. And here is one last detail before we return to that Saturday morning. For the 6 months preceding the shooting, Pramod Mahajan has been receiving calls from astrologers, multiple astrologers, independently, all telling him the same thing. Your life is in danger, Mr. Mahajan. From an insider, someone who's close to you. But Pramod, the man who modernized Indian politics, who believed in data and technology and professional campaigns, ignores the astrologers. He is a believer of the psephologists and the pollsters, not men who claim to read stars. But perhaps it was the latter that he should have listened just this one time, because by the time he found out what was about to happen to him, it was a little too late. Chapter 4: Losing Your Seat. It is Saturday morning, April 22nd, 2006. Pramod Mahajan has flown into Mumbai late the previous night from Nagpur, where he has been part of L.K. Advani's Bharat Suraksha Yatra. It has been a long week of political campaigning. And this morning, the apartment in Worli is quiet. Rekha is in the bedroom, the newspaper is open, the tea is warm. Around 8 a.m., the doorbell rings. It is Pravin. He is driven to his older brother's apartment after stopping at a temple, receiving blessings for what he was about to do next. He rings the bell and he is let inside. He does not break down a door, he does not climb through a window. He simply walks in and is offered tea as is custom in the Mahajan household. This detail will become central to the defense's argument later on, that if a man plans to murder his brother, they say, does he ring the doorbell? Does he accept the tea? Does he sit in the living room and have a conversation first? What happens next lasts just a few moments. Rekha Mahajan is in the bedroom. She will later take the witness stand in a Mumbai courtroom and describe this moment with a precision that only comes from reliving it endlessly. Quote, no sooner had I entered the bedroom, I heard something go fut-fut in the living room. End quote. Fut-fut. Not a bang, not the thunderclap you hear in films. A .32 caliber Browning pistol with its compact frame makes a sound that is modest, a sound you could mistake for a car backfiring or a firecracker or a door slamming shut. Fut, fut. Rekha rushes out, and her husband is there on the floor. His younger brother is standing. 4 bullets have been fired, and 3 of them have found their target. 1 in the lower right chest, 1 in the abdomen, and 1 tearing through the liver and damaging the pancreas and intestines, causing massive internal bleeding. The 4th bullet vanishes. Where it ends up, the police never publicly clarify. And Pramod Mahajan, on his living room floor, bleeding, does not curse. Hell, he doesn't even call the ambulance. He does not scream. He simply reaches for his phone and calls his brother-in-law Gopinath Munde. And in Marathi, barely breathing, he asks the question that will define this case. What crime had I committed that Pravin shot me? Pravin leaves, and on his way out, he turns to Rekha, his brother's wife, the woman he says he knew before she became his Vahini, and he says the line to her that destroys any suggestion of accidental firing, in my opinion, any claim that this was a momentary lapse. Quote, you did not listen to what I said, so now bear the consequences. End quote. Meanwhile, Munde does not wait for an ambulance. In Mumbai, waiting for an ambulance can cost you everything. So he bundles Pramod into a car and races through Saturday morning traffic to Hinduja Hospital in Mahim. They arrive at approximately 8:20 a.m. Pramod is conscious but fading. Emergency surgery begins almost immediately. Meanwhile, on the other side of the town, at 8:30 a.m., Pravin Mahajan walks into the Worli police station and confesses. No negotiations, no attempts to flee, just 6 words that leave the cops bewildered. I am Pravin. I killed Pramod. The officers at Worli station will later be criticized for what happens next, or rather what does not happen. As criminal lawyer Majid Memum will observe, quote, the police had not picked up Chand's fingerprints at the scene of the crime and had not legally recorded the confession of the offender soon after the commission of the crime, end quote. You see, in Indian criminal law, a confession made to police is not admissible in court. It must be recorded before a magistrate. Pravin's 6 words at Worli station are dramatic, but they are not, in the strictest legal sense, usable evidence. Chapter 5. Critical but stable. The emergency surgery lasts 4 hours. 4 hours of clamping, suturing, packing, draining. 4 hours during which the waiting room at Hinduja Hospital begins to fill with people who, on any other Saturday, would be running the country. BJP leaders, union ministers, chief ministers. The party's organizational brain is on an operating table. And the man who put him there is his own brother. Pramod survives the surgery. A liver specialist named Mohammed Rela is flown in from London to treat him. But surviving surgery and surviving are two very different things. When a bullet tears through the liver, the immediate crisis is hemorrhage. But the secondary crisis, the one that can kill you days later, is organ failure. Because when the liver shuts down, the kidneys follow. And once that cascade begins, it is extraordinarily difficult to stop. Hinduja Hospital becomes a political nerve center. Television channels run continuous stickers. Pramod Mahajan critical, Pramod Mahajan stable, Pramod Mahajan critical and stable. And that last phrase, critical and stable, becomes the defining oxymoron of those 11 days. It means the patient's vital signs are consistent, but hell, they are consistently bad. It gives hope while preparing you for the worst. And the days are not a straight line downward. There are hours when the numbers improve, when blood pressure steadies, when oxygen level tick upward. The family allows itself to believe that Pramod might just pull through because he's the man who survived the emergency, who built a political empire from nothing, who was too stubborn and too brilliant to die at 56. But those moments of hope are the cruelest part because they make what comes next harder to bear. At the hospital, meanwhile, a quiet detail is surfacing that nobody in the family wants to discuss. Sarangi, Pravin's wife, wants to visit Pramod. She asks to be allowed to see him. Prabhavati, the mother, the woman who gave birth to both men, blocks her from going. She's not permitted to visit. Whatever the dynamics between Sarangi and Pramod, whatever the whispers, whatever the truth, the mother has made a decision. Pravin's wife will not be at Pramod's bedside. Draw your own conclusions. Gopinath Munde, who had been at Pramod's side from the first hour, tells reporters, quote, "We hope such a calamity does not fall on anyone. All this has been extremely difficult for Pramod's mother," end quote. Now, Pramod's mother is a woman who has raised 5 kids. One of them shot the other, and now she sits in a hospital watching one of her sons die, knowing the other is already lost to her. There is no version of this story where she does not lose both. May 1st, 2006, day 10. The cascade begins. The kidneys are failing. The body, which has been fighting for 10 days, is running out of reserves. The word stable disappears from the medical bulletins. Then it's May 2nd. The family is called in. Not for 15-minute rotations at the bedside anymore. They're called in the way families are called when the doctors have done everything they can. And then it is May 3rd, 2006. The time is 4:10 p.m. Breaking. Pramod Mahajan is dead. This headline reverberates across the television screens in the nation, the very technology that he helped pioneer in India. Cardiac arrest is said as the reason for his death. He was just 56 years old, 11 days after his own brother shot him in his own living room on a Saturday morning while reading the newspaper. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, the former Prime Minister, says, quote, "The country has lost a skilled organizer, a forceful orator, and an aggressive representative of its youth," end quote. The funeral takes place the following day at Shivaji Park Crematorium in Dadar, Mumbai, the same ground where the BJP holds some of its massive rallies, the same ground that had witnessed some of Maharashtra's most consequential political moments. Now, it witnesses this, the cremation of a man killed not by an enemy, but by his own blood. Chapter 6. The Trial. The trial begins in the Mumbai Sessions Court before Judge S.P. Davare. 32 witnesses will take the stand. The prosecution is led by Ujjwal Nikam, one of India's most prominent criminal lawyers. This is the man who prosecuted the 1993 Mumbai bomb blast case, and the man who will go on to prosecute Ajmal Kasab, the lone surviving gunman from the 26/11 terror attacks. When the state of Maharashtra needs someone to make a case that the nation is watching, they call Ujjwal Nikam. Now, Nikam's theory is financial desperation. That monthly allowance, the failed businesses, and the SMS from April 15th demanding 1 crore rupees. Pramod had been providing 75,000 rupees a month to Pravin and his family, Nikam tells the court. Pravin sent a threatening SMS demanding 10 million rupees, he further goes on to say. So, the narrative he paints is a clean one. A man living on charity snaps when more is denied. The defense, on the other hand, is led by Harshad Ponda. Harshad Ponda's argument is not that Pravin did not fire the gun. You see, you cannot argue that when your client has literally walked into the police station and gone, I'm Pravin and I killed Pramod. Instead, Ponda argues nuance. He says this was not murder in the sense that it was a family argument that spiraled catastrophically. The shooting, he says, was not premeditated, it was accidental. Quote, Pravin was ushered into Pramod's home and even offered tea, he tells the court. Shots were fired afterwards and a family dispute likely provoked my client, end quote.
Aryaan, this logic of this was accidental. He walked in with good intentions. They were having tea, they were chit-chatting, and then they suddenly fought and there was a shooting. I don't buy it when the defendant has walked into the home with a gun, which I'm guessing is not normal even for the Mahajan household, for one family member to walk in with a gun. This is not a situation where both brothers are in the same home, there is an argument, there's a gun in the drawer, one pulls out the gun, shoots the other. You have walked into someone else's home with a gun that you've ended up using. So this argument which they're trying to make, which is premeditated murder or a murder in the heat of the moment, it doesn't quite fly when you've walked in with that gun.
I think it's a good distinction that you have firstly created, is that there is a reason why the lawyers are arguing this, and for long-time Desi Crime listeners, they would know that there is actually a lot of value to making a case heat of the moment in the case of homicide rather than premeditated, because the punishment varies drastically. In fact, if you are able to prove premeditated murder for profit, it is one of the worst forms of murder according to the punishment of the legal system. Now, to your point of it appears premeditated to you because he walked in with a gun, I 100% agree. Like, to me, there is an element of some premeditation that is almost guaranteed. That maybe he walked in with the gun thinking maybe my conversation with my brother might lead me to not shooting him. Sure, I can believe that. But that is still premeditation. You're still premeditating a scenario with whatever probabilistic or probability on the distribution curve that you're ascribing to it. There is a probability that you have thought of a scenario where murder is a likely outcome. And so as long as that's the case, to me, it's premeditated. But if you have made up your mind to shoot somebody basis what they say to you, if you're going into a conversation with your brother and if he says no to giving you the money that you've asked for and you've decided you're going to murder him, that's still premeditated murder to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Then Rekha Mahajan takes the stand. She describes the morning, the doorbell, the tea, the retreat to the bedroom, and then the sound, fut fut. She describes what Pravin said to her as he left. You did not listen to what I said, so now bear the consequences. She also reportedly faints in the court while reliving April 22nd. Then Poonam Mahajan, Pramod's daughter, takes the stand. She looks across the courtroom at the man that killed her father, her uncle, her chacha, and she says, quote, this person killed my father. I have come here to ask for justice. Rangi Mahajan also testifies for the defense. She makes a startling claim that the threatening SMS the prosecution keeps citing was actually sent by her, not Pravin. She says that the police tampered with it. She says that the real message was simply an innocuous request for a meeting. मैंने तो टेलीफोन से बात की थी, कब मिलने का है वो बताना था. She allegedly said that I spoke on the phone, tell me when to meet. But the defense brought a software engineer who demonstrated in court that the SMS messages were altered. Now, this again is up for debate, but this is what they said. And then comes the moment that should have been the trial's most explosive. Pravin took the stand himself on October 30th, 2007. Before entering the witness box, he tells the judge that other witnesses have lied to the court. And then he begins to speak. But barely has he started when the prosecution intervenes. They call his testimony, quote, scandalous, and demanded it be recorded behind closed doors. Judge Davare agrees. The courtroom is cleared. And what Pravin says in that closed session, nobody knows. Till date, for that testimony is sealed until the year 2027. When a VIP is killed, the judiciary churns its wheels faster. The trial does not drag on as many in our country do. And on December 18th, 2007, Judge Davare delivers his verdict. Guilty. Section 302, murder. The shooting, according to him, was intentional. The defense's accidental firing claim is rejected. 4 shots at close range, the judge says, is not an accident. But then the judge does something extraordinary. He rejects the prosecution's motive, the financial theory, the allowance, the SMS demanding 1 crore rupees, the narrative of a man driven to murder by money. The judge does not accept it. He convicts Pravin of intentional murder but does not endorse the reason the prosecution says he did it. Think about what that means. The court says, yes, this man killed his brother. Yes, he meant to do it, but no, we do not accept your explanation of why. The legally established motive for the murder of Pramod Mahajan remains to this day an open question. The prosecution pushes for the death penalty. Nikam says, quote, I will apply my mind to say which type of punishment should be asked for against these heinous crimes. Judge Davare sentences Pravin to life imprisonment instead, not death. His reasoning is captured in one sentence. Quote, this is not an extreme case of grave culpability. A brother shoots his brother 4 times in a living room, and the judge is calling it not extreme. But that's fair, because under the rarest of rare doctrine in Indian law, the death penalty is reserved for crimes committed with exceptional depravity. What the judge seems to be saying is that this crime, while murder, exists in a different moral universe. This is not a stranger killing for profit. This is something older and more tangled, a crime born of intimacy so deep that even the court cannot untangle it. Nasik Central Prison, built in the British colonial era. The same prison where 3 decades earlier, a young Pramod Mahajan was jailed during the emergency and used his time to earn a master's degree. And now, it is Pramod's brother who occupies a cell here. But Pravin does not study. He writes. The book he writes is called Maza Album, My Album, written in Marathi. On the day it is published, it sells 3,000 copies. The contents detonate across the Mahajan family like grenades. Pravin writes about Pramod's affairs. He describes the night that their mother Prabhavati knocked on the door and said, quote, I said Pramod wanted to speak to me. Suddenly, Vahini spoke. She said your brother is preparing for his second marriage and the girl had come to the house with a Mangal Sutra. When we reached, Pramod sobbed uncontrollably and admitted the affair had been going on for 2 years. End quote. He writes about affairs with foreign diplomats. He writes about his brother-in-law Gopinath Munde's alleged relationship with a Lavani dancer named Barkha. Quote, Gopinath was to meet Khushbu Thakre after the Barkha affair and was shivering, Pravin writes. When DNA India contacts Munde for comments, he says, quote, I have not read the book and will not read it. He has written nothing about me. End quote. The Congress NCP government in Maharashtra ordered an investigation into when and where Pravin wrote the book inside a state prison, but the investigation goes nowhere. Now we are in November 2009, and for some reason, Pravin is granted a 14-day furlough, almost like a temporary bail. That is because his wife Sarangi has an acute gynecological condition requiring surgery, and she refuses to have the procedure unless her husband is beside her. It is during this furlough that Pravin gives DNA India the interview that lays his contradictions bare. He says, quote, I did not kill Pramod. It happened. It happened in 15 minutes. End quote.
ये मेरे जीवन की कहानी है और इसमें प्रमोद था मैं प्रमोद के जीवन में था ये हमारे दोनों की भी गलती नहीं थी ये तो हो सकती है शायद समय की गलती थी.
Hear that again. A flat denial and then in the next breath an acknowledgement. It happened. The passive voice doing the work of a man who cannot bring himself to say, I shot my brother, but also cannot deny the reality. And then the timestamp. 15 minutes, as if brevity diminishes his act. He speaks about Pramod also in that interview. Quote, he was a born genius. There cannot be a second Pramod. Admiration, genuine, from the man who put 3 bullets in him. And then the quote that chills. Quote, Pramod never deserved such death. But as Khalil Gibran says, the murdered is not unaccountable for his own murder. You see, he is quoting poetry to suggest his brother bore responsibility for his own death. That but carries the weight of everything Pravin believes and could not say in court. He did not deserve to die, but. Then he also takes a turn on Ujjwal Nikam, the prosecuting lawyer. Quote, I do not find Ujjwal Nikam extraordinary at all. He is not a competent prosecutor. He speaks like a parrot. A convicted murderer on furlough critiquing the legal skills of the man who prosecuted the 26/11 attacks. Quite remarkable, I would say. The furlough that began on November 27th has to end on December 12th. And on December 11th, a day before Pravin is set to return to Nashik, to return to the prison, at around 10:30 p.m., he complains of fatigue, giddiness, a severe headache, and he is rushed to the Jupiter Hospital in Thane. The diagnosis is, coincidentally, a massive brain hemorrhage, and Pravin falls into a coma from which it doesn't seem likely he will ever wake up again. A team of specialists, a physician, a neurologist, a neurosurgeon, a cardiologist, keeps his body alive while his brain bleeds. Days become weeks, weeks become months. The hospital sends daily updates to the police and prison authorities because this man on life support is still technically a convicted murderer. Sarangi, his wife, is at the hospital. The twins are also there, and the bills are also mounting. In January 2010, the hospital costs exceed what the family can afford. Sarangi appeals to the Maharashtra state government, please pay for my husband's treatment. We have no money. But the government obviously declines. And while Pravin lies in a coma in Thane, his mother Prabhavati never visits, not once in 83 days. Her youngest son is dying alone, and the woman who gave him life does not come. She instead is at home, watching television. Watching specifically her grandson Rahul Mahajan's reality dating show, Rahul Dulhania Le Jayega. She dines with the 3 finalist women as well. She appears at the show's finale too. The mother watches reality TV while her son dies in a hospital 30 kilometers away. And then on March 3rd, 2010, 5 p.m., Pravin Mahajan dies. But this time, there is no breaking news coverage all over the world like there was when he had killed his brother. The reason for his death are multiple organ failures, extensive hemorrhage, sepsis. He's approximately 50 years old. He had been in a coma for 83 days. Almost nobody comes to his funeral. Not his brother, not his sister, not Rekha, not Poonam, not even Rahul. The only family member is Prakash, the third brother, the middle child. Quote, I have pledged my complete support to the family. He was my brother. I do not have much of a standing with Pramod's family, otherwise they would have informed me that Rahul is getting married on TV. Both brothers are now in the ground. Pramod shot in his living room, dead at 56. Pravin dead in a hospital bed at 50. His brain hemorrhaging on the last night of a furlough he was granted so his wife could have surgery. And Sarangi, the woman Pramod chose for Pravin at college function, the woman at the center of whispers the police were told not to pursue, is left in Thane with 2 teenagers and a 18 lakh rupees hospital bill, and a family that just will not take her calls. In 2024, she will make headlines again, publicly accusing Gopinath Munde's children, Dhananjay and Pankaja Munde, of fraudulently acquiring her land in Bir district. Now, most murder cases end with a verdict. The Pramod Mahajan case, however, refuses to stay closed. 18 years after the shooting, the victim's own daughter walks into a television studio and says the words that seem to have rewritten the narrative. It's November 2024. Poonam Mahajan has just lost her Mumbai North Central Lok Sabha seat. In a painful irony, the BJP replaced her with Ujjwal Nikam, the very prosecutor who convicted her uncle. Nikam lost the election, and Poonam, sidelined from the ticket, watched from the outside. And it is in this moment that something sparks in her and she speaks. She goes on Z24 Tas, a Marathi news channel, and says, quote, I have always said there was a bigger conspiracy behind it. Someday, maybe today or tomorrow, the truth about my father's murder will emerge, revealing why it actually happened. There was no quarrel between the brothers. When one gives and the other takes, there is no quarrel, but there was a large conspiracy behind it. End quote. A bigger conspiracy, not a family dispute, not a brother who snapped. She is saying Pravin was simply a tool, that someone with a political motive orchestrated the murder of Pramod Mahajan and used his own brother as the weapon. She tells another outlet, quote, "When my father was killed, there was talk that it was a family matter, but a conspiracy was hatched to stop Pramod Mahajan's political career from progressing." End quote. Now, these are extraordinary claims, and they arrive without a shred of evidence. No FIR, no documentation, no witness, no forensic evidence. The original trial heard 32 witnesses and found Pravin acted alone. The timing of her remarks invites skepticism. A politician who has just lost her seat making explosive claims that she had 18 years to make else. The timing of her remarks naturally invites skepticism. A politician who has just lost her seat making explosive claims she has had 18 years to make. Now, conspiracy or not, the actual motive of Pramod's murder, which can be found in Pravin's testimony, is in fact sealed. Whatever Pravin said behind closed doors in that courtroom on October 30th, 2007, it was inflammatory enough to be hidden from the public, and it is sealed until 2027. Pravin is dead, but the words are on record somewhere, locked in a file, waiting. But that file is closed. Both brothers are dead. The woman at the center of the whispers lives quietly in Thane, fighting land disputes with her dead husband's own relatives. And somewhere in a government archive, on a document that cannot be opened, are the words Pravin Mahajan spoke behind closed doors, the words the prosecution called scandalous, the words that might contain the answer to the only question that actually matters. But until then, all we have is a sound, fut-fut, and a question from a living room floor in Worli. What crime had I committed? Until we tell you our next story, stay safe, stay crazy, and stay desi.
If you like what we do here at Desi Studios and absolutely love what we're wearing today, this is merch you can go buy all for yourself.
You can buy this Desi Crime merch in our YouTube store on the link down below at Karak Merch. Keep the engines at Desi Studios rolling so we can pay our videographer right behind the camera to make these amazing episodes just for you.